Welcome to Future Role Model, a podcast that praises the unconventional and redefines what it means to be a role model. Apologize if I sound like I'm laughing because I was just laughing. Today I have a guest I'm very excited about. Jessa Reed is in the house.
Hello.
And we did just discover that we sound really similar on the microphone. So if anything fucked up is said, it was Jessa. I didn't do it.
Very true. Anyone who knows me knows that.
It's probably likely. Jessa, I'm just excited about your career right now. You're kind of blowing up.
It's going pretty well. Yeah, 2018 has been a good year for me so far.
18 is our money year because, our birthdays are on the 18th. We both have the same birthday.
That's right.
I always said 2018 was going to be my big year too. And I wrote myself a check for $1 million 5 years ago for this year. I can't cash it. So it's not going as well as I had projected, but
I also cannot cash mine for 1,000. I aimed a little lower and still not quite there.
I put it like it was one of those douchey things that I read in somebody's book, like, write yourself a check for $1 million. And I'm like, that just staring at that just makes me pissed. And the ink is basically gone.
Thanks a lot, Jim Carrey.
Exactly. If you leave a check in your windowsill, the ink actually disappears.
Yeah.
So frame away, guys. Your ink will just be gone. But Jessa just debuted recently on This Is Not Happening on Comedy Central. And I did what people aren't supposed to do for themselves. And I went through YouTube and read your comments, and everybody loves you.
Yeah, I read the comments every day.
It's so awesome.
They are. Well, when I was getting ready for This Is Not Happening, I'm a lunatic. So I watched because it's a YouTube series also. So I watched every single story that had ever been told on This Is Not Happening, and I read everyone else's comments. I'm a little bit obsessive.
Yeah.
And so I know what these people have to say. Like, I know how these commenters are. And they were, I think also my self-esteem is maybe a little bit higher than it should be. So I also just like criticism kind of rolls off my back for the most part. And so there are several people that say not nice things, but I just like,
well, the things that they say that aren't nice are things that you already say about yourself. They're like, oh, she's a crackhead. And you're like, well, I was.
It's a story about drinking pee on meth.
Yeah.
I think.
You're like, I
Thanks
know.
for the hot take. Yeah.
But it was just refreshing to see, like, everybody was like, wow, this woman is like amazing, or what a unique point of view, or like just really good. I don't know. It makes me happy because I don't read other people's comments very often. I don't. And
thank you for reading them.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Did you see all the ones calling me thick?
Yeah.
I wish I could go back and tell 20-year-old me to just quit dieting. Those thighs are going to come in style at some point. People on YouTube are going to love them. Just accept them because you're not going to get rid of them anyway, but they're going to be the cool thing at some point in the future.
Thickness is good. That was Candace Thompson's nickname. She said in college, the thickness. And I was dying when she told me that. And I was called Thunder Thighs when I was a kid.
You? Really?
Yeah, I was.
Wow.
Surprisingly. I was a chubby little nugget.
Really?
Before I stretched out. Until I was like 3.
Oh, okay. They called you Thunder Thighs like just at home?
Yeah.
Daycare?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just put me in a diaper and let themselves be entertained. So obviously Jess is very open about her past and stuff, but what we kind of talk about on here is the fact that, role models are not what they used to be. Everybody used to kind of look at people like they were supposed to live up to something in particular. And now you can be a role model and have done really fucked up things in the past, like I have, and like a lot of other people have. And it's cool to talk about that. So growing up, did you have any role models, or how did you end up? What was your life before meth? Before we get into the meth talk.
Let's see. My life before meth, my parents, I was born in Delaware. My mom dipped when I was 2. And so I was raised by men, just like my dad and his 3 or 4 roommates until I was about 6 years old. And so you can see a lot of that lack of feminine influence in my personality. Also, I just loiter in the bathroom all the time.
And you love to be hugged.
I love, yeah. That was probably due to other trauma. I then moved to Portland, where my mom was when I was 6, and my mom was an active drug addict. And I just kind of acclimated to the life of being white trash. from there, I was very good at it. It was very quick. It was one day just in the pits is what they called it on the side of the trailer park. There was like these construction pits, and I smoked my first cigarette. I learned what humping was, and just got my street education and was like, oh yeah, I'm cut out for this. And I think my only role model, like I was obsessed with Madonna, obsessed.
That's an interesting obsession for you.
Obsessed with Madonna.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's weird that I don't talk about it because it was such a gigantic. Well, because there are some great Madonna stories. I wanted to be an actress. Mm-hmm. And when I was 14, my dad took me to an audition, but I historically am terrible at auditions. But when I was in sixth grade. When I was 12, I won the talent show doing Madonna Like a Prayer, like a choreographed lip syncing to Madonna Like a Prayer, which is crazy because I was a huge dork and nobody liked me in junior high.
I would love to see that video.
And I was so popular. I was wearing spandex and a white t-shirt. And
was it the spandex with the lace at the bottom? Because that was the cool thing.
It was the spandex bike shorts with the hot pink stripe on the side. And like I didn't even have my own. I had to like borrow them. And
I know the shorts.
So then I had fake Keds because Keds were in, and I had like just scribbled with a blue marker
Walmart
on the
Keds.
back. Yep. Mm-hmm. To make them look like real Keds. And then I tried to do another talent show that year to Paula Abdul and lost and choked actually, and then blamed that on not doing Madonna, not staying true to my brand. When I was 14, I then went back to live with my dad in Delaware at some point. And when I was maybe 13, he took me to audition for a play called A Child's Christmas in Wales.
In Wales?
Yeah, like, is that England or something? Not inside of Wales, just like in Wales, a place.
He took you all the way to Wales? That's a fucking awesome trip.
It's the name of a play, and the play I think is probably just a Christmas play. I didn't get that far into it, but I had to sing for the audition, and I took a song called Oh Father, which is a Madonna song about getting molested by your dad. And my dad had like watched me practice the song and was more focused on how tone deaf I was than the fact that I was about to sing a song about getting molested by my dad. At an audition for a Christmas play. So then the lady's playing them, I bring the music and it's like, you can't hurt me now. I got away from you. I never thought I could. It's funny. They say, you can forget the tears and the pain. What a child will believe. You never loved me. And my dad's like, he said, as I was trying to figure out why everyone was staring at me. And then I start to tune into the words and I was like, oh God.
You had a revelation.
He just realized I was just always making my dad look like he molested me.
That's priceless.
Yeah, so I was very, very obsessed with Madonna till like, I don't know, 14, when I discovered drugs, 14 or 15.
Yeah. Well, and she she's not a terrible role model. She was kind of like alternative and groundbreaking in her day. So she was very powerful, very, push the envelope, endlessly push the envelope on sex and women's right to enjoy sex, which back then wasn't we existed as an extension for, for men to come. That's it. It was not. So she pioneered a lot of that, which is a weird thing to look up to when you're 7 or 8, but when you're me, it makes sense. And I thought she was the prettiest. She thought she dressed so which is
crazy.
Cool. I think she's such a cool role model to have because I think a lot of girls that are younger, they look up to like the pop stars, like the Britney Spears' type. I don't know what that would have been right in that era because you were just like
she was the pop star, but it was so much less bubblegum.
Exactly, it was more raw. So what age did you start dabbling in some of the drugs and some of the more party scene stuff that you got into eventually in Portland?
Around 14, I was still in Delaware, and I spent most of 14 in and out of mental institutions, and went back to visit my mom at 15 and started smoking pot around that time. Decided that Portland would probably be a better place for me to live because I could smoke pot.
So it really is a gateway drug.
Yeah, Portland is a huge gateway drug to pot. Yeah. So drinking, smoking pot at 15, never went to school. So I got failed 9th grade, failed pretty much every grade since 5th, but I was so insufferably full of shit that the teachers would just pass me. I had to do summer school one time, but other than that, it was like, you're getting sent to the next grade with an F.
I feel like for you, though, it would have been like by choice. Did you just not pass by choice?
I never did any work ever.
You just didn't.
I just couldn't. I still to this day am not someone who's great at doing things I don't want to do. So if I have to do something, I have to have figured out a way to program my mind to decide that I want to do it. Just never. And the idea of you shoving information into my head was just not interested at all. So I didn't think I was smart until I was into my 20s and then realized like, oh, I'm actually, because that thing also is every single report card says does not live up to potential. And I just thought like, no, I just don't have this potential that you're talking about, because if intelligence is being able to memorize this bullshit you're cramming down my throat and write it onto a test, I'm not smart.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got into my early 20s and realized how actually the entire time that I wasn't doing well in school, I was assimilating a lot of information and gathering a lot of knowledge from the world around me. I'm just not someone that can be taught things that she's not interested in.
Yeah. And I'm really similar, and I relate to you in a lot of ways on that regard.
Yeah. So I homeschool my kids because of this, because I think it's not a one size fits all. I also don't think the ability to memorize information and put it down on a test 3 weeks later
doesn't make you retain it, actually.
Right,
like,
exactly.
To actually be able to learn something and apply it is completely different. And I think schools are finally understanding, like, my fiance is dyslexic, and he had the same issues when he was in school. Like, people thought he was stupid, and he was like, oh, I just thought I was a dumb jock. And then they realized I was dyslexic. And then when I started getting a little bit more attention in that regard, I was actually really good at school.
Yeah.
So people just don't learn the same way when it comes down to it.
Exactly. So even my kids have two completely different ways of learning, and at two totally different paces. One of them, she does 2 grades a year. She'll be out of high school at 12 and needs very little interaction. The other one you have to trick into learning things.
Yeah.
She's just obstinate.
Lilith?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Makes sense. So when, like, I know a lot about Jessa because we originally met in the Big Sky Comedy Festival performing on it. What year was that? 2014? 14. Mm-hmm. And then you have been a producer on it since that year?
Yeah.
Okay. And I just came on as a producer last year, or like one of the producing team members. And so we'll be working on it again this year, which is cool. So now we have roomed together now 3 times in 2 different cities.
Yeah.
And this has allowed for us to stay up late and talk about a lot of really cool stuff. That's how we originally first kind of connected, was we were assigned as roommates in this festival. And I didn't know anything about Jessa. She was living in Philly and opposite coast. And I just, as soon as I found out that she was like a former meth addict, I was like, oh God, are we going to get along in this?
Yeah,
You just never know.
Yeah.
You're with somebody for like 5 days. You're like, that's pretty committal but it was awesome. And the first night, I think it was when we ended up finding out we had the same birthday, which I didn't think would be very significant, but over time I realized that like we have
so
a
many
lot of similarities. Like
yeah.
to the way we even like eat our food, which is really strange. But that was when I started talking to you about your early experiences into meth, because, not to shine any sort of positive light onto drugs, but there are a lot of different communities within life. I don't know how to explain it, but like you had a kind of a very wonderful community in that world.
Yeah.
And I understand why people get connected and hooked into certain, drugs or lifestyles, because it is its own community that's accepting of you.
I definitely had a different experience than most addicts in that, and I know for sure that had I not done 6 years of active meth addiction, my life would not be near as happy as it is now, because it was kind of a fast track to processing my childhood trauma, to accepting things about my childhood, to learning things about myself, to really kind of like enlightenment for me, to where I was able to then start over at 27, 28, having like just kind of beat all of these things about me that were going to hold me back for the rest of my life.
Right.
And before I used drugs, I spent my entire life feeling kind of disillusioned with reality and like there has to be more to life than this and bothered by this being it. It just never felt like this was it. And I felt like on drugs, that time outside of society, that time outside of the noise, nickels, and numbers, the alarm going off in the morning, the expectation to work. I was able to kind of see behind the curtain and find what I believe to be real. And then as a result of that, I'm someone who's able to find things that make me happy, pursue things that make me happy without this kind of fear of loss or fear of failure or fear that a lot of people have who didn't get to take that time. So I'm sure some people go backpacking in Europe and other people shoot meth in River Bridge.
It's kind of the same thing. Both are a definite trip, that's for sure. How did you end up cycling into that though? I mean, like what was your introduction into that world?
I actually was doing stand-up. I started doing stand-up. Well, I had gotten knocked up by a pastor's kid when I was 16. So I got married and had a kid and then was just like a housewife for like 6 years. And then at the end of that marriage, I was 21. I started doing stand-up comedy and I was traveling all the time, just doing like one-nighters, like shitty, road gigs.
Little gigs.
And I would drink so much at those gigs that I would be like still drunk in the morning when it was time to drive to the next gig. And someone was like, oh, you should just do a bump of Coke. And that will sober you up enough that you won't have a hangover or whatever. And so I knew I could handle the Coke because I'd already finished my Coke phase by 21. And so I
Trailer
asked.
parks.
I just was like, checking a lot of boxes, getting a lot of statistics out of the way.
You have lived like 19 lives already. It's pretty awesome, but okay.
So I asked the bartender for a line of white, which does not mean Coke in Butte, Montana, and did crank, which is the old meth, for the first time and was immediately addicted. Just like instantly, this is what I'm going to do because this was the first time that I felt smart. I felt like I understood everything. I felt like I had been vibrating at this frequency my whole life in a world that vibrates at it, that resonates at a different thing. And for the first time, I felt lined up, that the world lined up with how I felt. And so I went back home to Portland. I quit doing comedy and I just did meth for like 6 years. And when I quit meth, it was kind of like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, and she talks about it in her This Is Not How. You have to, so the time frame she's skipping over, you can watch her This Is Not Happening set and see what that is. But it's pretty crazy that somebody just had to suggest to you to stop meth and then you just did.
Yeah. So the story is a gross consolidation of the actual events because I kept trying to tell it the way it was, which was actually that I got cleaned about a week later, but it just flopped as a story on stage. And so in the story, I just was like, man, I quit in the moment. But it was a week later, I was like, I'm just leaving Portland. And so I was leaving Portland. I get on an airplane and I had already arranged to have the meth sent to me in Delaware where I was moving. And I was on the airplane and just kind of playing the tape forward and thinking like, oh, I'm going to get ripped off. I'm going to send the money. They're not going to send the meth because that's how tweakers are. And then I'm going to be frustrated or I am going to get the meth and be the only person on meth in Delaware. So I'll just quit. And that was...
So on the flight, that's when you decided?
Yep. I was just like, screw it.
Dang, I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's funny. Did the meth ever show up?
No, It was like a pipeline I had lined up.
Yeah.
And by the time I got on the airplane, I'd already had a couple days sober. And so I was just like, just felt annoyed with the, I feel like a lot of tweakers in the situation would convince themselves that somebody was going to actually pull off sending them meth. But tweakers are awful at any type of errand. You send them on and then you're sending them money. They're going to spend your money. They're going to do your dope and then they're going to lie to you about it and you're going to get frustrated. And so I was pretty self-aware, just pretty understood how the world worked.
Yeah.
And didn't get caught up in a lot of that. And so I was like, they're going to not send it to me. And I'm already on this airplane and I'm already 2 days sober. Like, might as well just do it for the rest of my life. And and so when I got into recovery, I could never relate fully to I just was so fortunate to have let it, just for it to have run its course, and its course to only be 6 years, because I never tried to get clean the entire time. I never even entertained the idea of getting clean until the moment I decide. But that's very much how I am. It's like,
you can turn it on, turn it off.
when I decide I'm going to do something, you'll know that I decided to do it because I'm doing it right now, because I decided 35 seconds ago that this is what I'm going to do. Like, I don't think about things for very long before I decide to do them. And
it's actually kind of a good quality.
Yeah, it's not.
It doesn't leave you in limbo very long. Yes. Limbo sucks.
Some people call it poor impulse control. Guess it kind of depends on if you're getting clean or buying a car.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, in that time, did you really have anybody that was like kind of your confidant or a mentor to you while you were in the tweaker community? Or did you have anybody that you considered maybe a role model during that time? Or were you just so busy kind of working on Jessa during that time?
So there was a community of like 50 to 100 meth addicts, and we all just kind of intermingled in different configurations, and some people were in and out of prison, but you didn't really interact with any normal people that whole time. Mm-hmm. And I would say probably I was not the role model. I was this weird combination of like life coach, but also had my shit the least together. Like, I had a near-death experience, and I came back, and just kind of how I am now, where I just have this like underlying understanding of humans and how they work and how to find happiness, but in the most unconventional ways. But also, I have to sleep on your couch while I'm giving you life advice, because like I don't have a house. And I think probably like throughout that time, I met a lot of people that I learned from and gained things from that I used to better myself. But I wouldn't say there was really a role model in that era of my life. When I got clean, it was my dad. Mm-hmm. I think when I got clean, my dad had like 7 years. And I kind of just had this thing. I'm someone that hates to be told what to do, and I'm somewhat obstinate, but I'm more likely to figure out what it is you expect and get it done before you can say anything, because I just hate it. I can't have a job where a boss is micromanaging. I'll just quit. I don't like being told what to do. And so when I got into recovery, I was like, okay, what are the expectations here? And got them done. Like, steps. Okay, steps done. Boom, 6 weeks. Like, I don't like being told what to do. But in this particular era, like this era of my life, when I first got clean, I had a lot of self-doubt, where I just thought like, that felt like a point in my life where I learned a lot, and it was unconventional, a lot of horrible things happened, and I witnessed a lot of like violence and dark things, and I participated in a lot of things that I should be ashamed of. And I felt like, but I had like a bad relationship, like an abusive relationship, where I was convinced that this person was my soulmate, and he treated me really bad, which led to me getting on the airplane in the first place, because I just can't let someone treat me bad for an extended period of time. But because of that relationship, because I thought I was wrong about that relationship, I felt like I can't trust anything that I thought I gained in the last 5 years.
Right.
So for like a year, I let my dad make most of my decisions. I wouldn't.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Right after you got clean?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of freeing, though, to give all that to somebody else.
Yeah.
Not have to make not having to make choices is so stress-free.
Yeah.
My grandma always told me that. She's like, if you're feeling stressed, just get rid of shit, because shit makes you have to make decisions, and decisions are what make you stressful.
Oh God, I love your grandma.
Yeah, I know. My grandma's
get
so
rid of
amazing.
all your things.
Just get rid of everything, and you won't have any stress. So, yeah, I mean, during your getting clean phase, I mean, is there anything that you've opened up in comedy about that time? Because I know you talk mostly about like your past and like being on drugs, but have you talked about like what that phase was like coming out of it?
Yeah, when I first got clean, about a year after getting clean, I started doing recovery comedy, and I just did comedy at like 12-step conventions and stuff. Like, they get together and so
which are great crowds, by the way.
Best crowds.
Best crowds.
A crowd, because it's a weird thing to drink and then listen to comedy. Because like you need your mind for it. It's not music that you can just dance to. Like, and you have to be able to comprehend information. It's a weird thing that people drink. So as a comedian, you have like tags that you know are brilliant that almost never hit. It's because nobody's brain's sharp enough. So when you do a show for sober people who are there just to laugh, you never get heckled. They never, sometimes you get the heckling where they want to participate because they don't understand how things work. But like, they get all of your jokes. And so it made me kind of a shitty comedian, like an overconfident comedian, because I was just crushing. I was headlining within 6 months to a year and just crushing all the time. And so that's how I got humbled at Big Sky. But
we'll get to that.
Yeah, so that during that era, I wasn't like, here, Dad, you get to make my decisions, but just everything he said and he advised, I was very open and very malleable. Is that the word I'm looking for? Just very, if he said it, I really took it into consideration. There was a lot during that era that I was a liar. Like I was a huge liar my whole life. And that era, I had to learn how to be honest. And I would make myself go tell people if I lied.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So by that point, I was no longer, because I was like a compulsive liar for attention and stuff when I was younger.
Just about little things that didn't matter.
Just dumb shit. And then at some point, I realized like my life is crazy enough that I don't have to make things up to impress people. Right. They are quote unquote impressed. Or they are something. Yeah, they are not going to forget about you. You're getting attention with your own shit. You don't have to steal things from movies. Plus, the internet came out and it became a really shitty time to be full of shit. They could Google it.
Yeah.
You could be fact checked. And so but I still lied to avoid confrontation, wicked fear of rejection. And so I just lied about dumb shit and then would have to go back and be like, I lied to you about that. And I didn't take long for that to break me of lying because that's the worst.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, having to confront yourself, because I used to be like that too, where I would like call myself, I cheated on one test and I screamed in the middle of the test that I cheated. And I got made fun of in high school for it for like weeks. Because I like had an answer written inside of a folder that was on my desk. And I knew exactly where the answer was. And I looked at it and then 5 minutes later, I was like, I cheated. And they were like, what? And I was like, that answer. Anyway, so I.
Oh, yeah. God, we are similar. Because find someone who has what you want and do what they did is a kind of a recovery thing, I think. And I love that.
Yeah, it's really good.
And then I look at things in my life when I want to accomplish something, and that I did with my career is find people who have what I want and do what they did. Like listen to how they got there, watch what they are, what they do, and emulate it, and or at least take in all of the information and figure out what lines up with you. And I think, but for like self-improvement or evolving as a person or overcoming addiction, you know, a lot of people get into recovery and then they want to fight it every step of the way. And for me, I felt like I don't relate to a lot of this because I don't have a desire to use. Because if I wanted to use, I'd use.
Right.
I couldn't tell you what it's like to quit against my own will. The only thing in my life substance I've ever done, because I quit smoking I said, this is my last cigarette and never smoked another cigarette again. And I love cigarettes. The only thing I've ever felt like I was doing against my will was overeating. And that was a years-long battle. Just like like self-destructive binge eating. And then I got hypnotized to get rid of that. And then...
Ooh, that worked?
Yeah.
Wow.
So then I was like, well, I'm going to become a hypnotist. So then I went to school to become a hypnotist. There was a few years where I just went to school for careers that I never did.
There's so many things I still discover about you. It's like having like if you could personify being a Bible that somebody would find in 500 years, like if your story could be a book, it'd just be like all these chapters and you're like, there's no way that this is the same book. And then you look to the front and you're like, oh, it's the same fucking book. Like I'm always blown away in a really cool way though.
We were talking on our podcast. I do a podcast with a Mormon, and we were talking about his loss of identity when he left Mormonism. And I was like, that is a thing I can't relate to at all because the people that know me, I know everyone in like 3-year chunks. Now through Facebook, we know each other forever.
Right.
But the people who are like active parts of my life, they're just a bunch of tiny vignettes. And they're like, oh, well, I knew Jessa when she was a super granola mom. hypnotist. And it's like, oh, really? Because I knew Jessa when she was an alien bag lady drug addict. And it was like, oh, really? Because now I know Jessa, she fucks 25-year-olds.
Yeah. Oh my God. All the different chapters of Jessa.
So I don't lose. I shed identities every 36 months.
The eventual book or books that you write are going to have to be like a Harry Potter, where each chapter is its own fucking book, and it's going to have to like live inside of one of those like shelf units. But I think the most intriguing, some of the most intriguing conversations that we've had, I think there's two main categories. One has been feeling this feeling of enlightenment, conversations about that, and then conversations about, which I know that marriage is not so much anymore, but about polyamory.
Yeah.
So those are two things that you really kind of opened my mind to, because I always approach conversations with I'm very open-minded.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you've made me, not made me like forced me, but like you've allowed me to learn about things that I've never been exposed to from other people.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. So is there anything in either of those topics that you feel is something that people, because both are kind of things people look at weirdly, because the whole enlightenment thing, I mean, people make fun of it now saying, oh, you got woke, you're not woke, all that stuff. But it's, but there's some truth to that, and like a shift that everybody's kind of starting to feel right now.
Yeah. I think a lot of, I think reality is perception based. And I think that when you're from the outside looking in on other people's experience, it's kind of abstract. So it can seem ridiculous until you're experiencing it yourself. So I had a near-death experience in 2000. I just woke up in this ball of light and realized I was a part of it. And according to the ball of light, we just come here to create reality, that none of it's real, none of it's good or bad, none of it's right or wrong, like all the dichotomy and all of the conflict doesn't actually exist. And it just changed the course of my life, because looking at everything through that, looking at it like a game rather than this thing that's happening to me, really gave me a lot of control. Now, none of that could be true. That could be meth-induced schizophrenia. Who cares? I think the only thing that is true is what you believe to be true. So why would...
Absolutely.
And a thing I've been talking about lately is the Jessa Reed Guide to Always Winning. Because I believe that I'm always getting what I want. And even when it appears that it's not what I want, it's either the death of a... I think when I decide I want to experience something, it starts to form. And a lot of times that includes the death of what I was experiencing before that. And you see so many people so many times say like, I want a family. Then they get the family and they just grass is greener. And it's like, dude, don't you remember 2 years ago saying you want a family and you got it? And now you're like, God, I can never go anywhere. And it's like,
well, this
because
is what
you feel
wanted.
like life is happening to you. And a lot of times when I experience something that feels like it's not what I want, I radically accept it. First, I make sure that there's nothing I can do to change it. And this is all like things I cannot change, and the wisdom to know difference. But like, and if I can't change it, I accept it. And I accept it by, first of all, forcing myself to think about the things I'm afraid of. So like, let's use love as an example. I just recently experienced kind of like an attachment type love, which I know is not healthy and does not work out in any way, shape, or form. And that attachment type love will force you to act out some of your worst fears. And so to detach from that, I had to like force myself to think about this other person with someone else, or moving on without me, or leaving me, or abandonment. Like force myself to all of the things that were triggering me, force myself to play all those tapes forward until I was desensitized to that.
Yeah.
And then I look at the breakup as, how is this in my best interest? Well, this is in my best interest because I just got out of a long marriage and I wanted to take some time for myself. And also this relationship's better as a friendship. So I go through all of these things, and like my podcast partner says, well, that's a mental trick. And it's like, well, all reality is what you perceive it to be. Why would I ever perceive it to be anything other than me constantly winning? That's ridiculous. Like, why would you write the story any other way? Why would I want to live in a world that's happening to me? The same things are going to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
I actually do have better experience as a result of seeing everything as either the manifestation of my desires or a lesson for me to learn.
Yeah. And which is such a cool and positive, it's like a weirdly optimistic way to look at something very pragmatically.
Yeah, and it's not, I'm not like an idiot that's just like, everything's great. You know, I feel my pain. I feel my, the process of detaching from something you're attached to is extremely painful.
Oh,
and it's
yeah,
like
it's
I'm
horrible.
clockwork oranging my mind through things that I'm afraid of. I treat my mind very much like it is a game that I'm playing and that it needs that I'm in charge of it. Mm-hmm. But I still like feel feelings, but it's almost from like a macrocosmic view where it's like, and I had my last 2 kids, I had them at home without drugs. And I learned so much in that process about pain that you can apply to all pain.
Not even imagine.
Which is just like, this is the pain. I'm feeling this pain right now. If this pain was a color, what color would this pain be? If this pain was a shape, what shape does this pain be? And just letting it grab you and take you and just being like, I'm here in this moment in this pain and this will not last forever. Mm-hmm. And I'm just riding the wave of the moment.
It's the same way that people say you can like have had a really traumatic injury or really traumatic experience, but then, over the course of time, you're able to reflect back on it and talk about it as if it was just like a sandwich you ate yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing, like training yourself to like, but in a sped up process.
Yeah. So my perception of time is also different than everyone else's.
Yeah.
They call it Jessa time. And
just watch the movie Arrival and you'll understand.
Yeah. Everything that is a good, everything just for me is just very fast. And so patience has been a huge thing that I've had to learn throughout my life because to me, a week is like 6 months to a year. It's just I'm a completely different person than I was a week ago. And when something happens to me, the speed with which I have already accepted it and moved on is very fast, which feels very cold and detached and cruel to people who are involved with me.
Yeah.
Because it's not that I didn't feel the same pain that you're feeling. It's just that was Thursday.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Polyamory is something that I have not been exposed. There's a lot of things in my life that like I just came up with as personal things that made sense to me based on my own life experience, but I haven't had a lot of interaction with those communities.
Right.
And polyamory is one of these where I haven't been exposed a lot to polyamory. I do after I have fully formed a doctrine of life in my head, I will go research the people that already have it. Mm-hmm. I like it to be not influenced by other people's version before I have formed what makes sense. And the idea of non-monogamy after getting just crushed in my first marriage by what was actually a great relationship with me and a young man who was raised super religious and just needed to fuck other chicks, just needed to have sexual experiences and got married too young. Mm-hmm. And rather than if monogamy didn't exist, we wouldn't still be together today because that was 300 versions of me ago. But we would have had a better time if I hadn't been raised to believe that his desire to put it in a bunch of different holes was a reflection on me,
right?
And my worth. And that if I didn't believe I had ownership over his body, and if I wasn't taught all those things. If monogamy didn't exist, then we would have had a great run because we connected on every other level.
Yeah.
And my own fears of intimacy and everything else aside. But like, so that's I kind of, by the end of that marriage, decided I think monogamy is the problem, but that was in like a self-defense kind of, if I just let them.
If I got hurt this way, I'm going to do the opposite next time.
And that's a lot of what my life has been. So I've been mostly non-monogamous in relationships after that. And I don't end up doing much because I don't have the attention span for one relationship, much less like multiple. Yeah. But I just detached my feelings for the most part, from what they're doing. And that's a whole like journey of conquering jealousy and possessiveness and fear of loss and everything else. But I just think it puts you into a position to have a more pure, unconditional love that's not codependent and not attached.
Well, and a love for yourself, I feel like.
Exactly.
Because if you if you truly do love who you are, you don't have to feel special in that way.
Yeah. I just felt like I had my first kid when I was 17, and my entire body is covered in stretch marks and cellulite, and the thighs are all out of control. And then I lost my teeth and didn't have teeth for my entire 20s, which is boot camp for body. Like, that's body image boot camp. If you just walk around without a grill in your 20s, that's it. Like that, because at least when you're like, when I'm overweight, because I've been very overweight, like that's a whole thing for a lot of dudes, right?
Right.
But when you don't have teeth, like nobody's like, man, did you see that bitch with only 2 teeth? Like she is. So I had to learn self-acceptance. Like I had to learn. And then, so my personality was just doing push-ups like the whole time that everybody else was wearing bikinis and smiling in pictures, like my personality was just doing push-ups. So then when my thighs came into style and I got dentures, and then I also had this personality, I just feel like no vagina is going to take a man from me. You know what I mean? He's not going to go have a sexual experience so mind-blowing that like at the end, he's not going to want to come have a conversation with me. And if he does, so be it. You know, because I'm not usually attached like that. I'm usually like, well, if that's what happens, then that's what was supposed to happen.
Sure.
We're on this path. I don't think that relationships are supposed to last forever. I think you're on a path with a person while you guys trade pieces of yourselves. And then those paths diverge. And I think it's very rarely do you ride off into the actual sunset with someone.
Yeah. And since we had that conversation, like we've had a number of conversations about this, but the last big sky was when we kind of jumped into a little bit more.
Yeah.
And ever since then, my mind has definitely opened up more to that idea of that maybe not everything is meant to be forever.
Yeah.
And that's such a strange concept to think you're supposed to die with one person. Like, I hope I die. That's a weird thing to talk about, but I don't know. I just hope I die having a lot of cool people in my life.
Yeah, no, it's this false security, I think, because you love someone and you start to get vulnerable and you immediately start looking outside of yourself for something to hold on to, somewhere to put your feet, some type of security. And so monogamy is false security because you think as long as nobody else has access to him, he won't leave. Promising forever. Like, of course it feels like forever when you're first caught up in that thing, but like realistically look back on your life. How many people have you felt that way about, And it's all these things where you're trying to contractually bind yourselves to each other, and you're trying to create this fortress of security, and it can be gone tomorrow. Tomorrow you could just see someone in a parking lot and fall in love and everything's shattered. Like it's all false security. The only true security is within yourself. Mm-hmm. And with knowing today, you're the person I want to be with today. I can't promise you tomorrow, and you can't promise me tomorrow. And everyone who does is lying because you have no idea who you're going to be in a year. Yeah.
And that's why making plans, that's why I've always kind of like, if I have to quote unquote make a plan for something, like a life plan, like I've had to do this a lot with my fiance lately. And, a big reason why we ended up pushing the wedding was I was just like, I can't really make a life plan right now.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things swirling and that are up in the air, and I just don't feel like plans make sense.
Yeah.
And so then
I feel that way right now so much.
Yeah.
I feel my entire life has been endlessly in flux since it's been about 15 months to where I haven't come up for air. It is just it just nothing like is the same from month to month.
Yeah. No, I feel like that too. And I feel like a lot of my friends are feeling that right now. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but it's just a very big transitional time in a lot of people's lives, and I'm feeling it. And it's definitely caused me to not try and make any rash decisions necessarily, but it's made me kind of like, I've told you about this, but like I tend to be a runner. So when I start to be like stressed out by like having to plan something, I'm like, I'm just going to go to Europe.
Yeah.
For like a week and just hang out. Cause that's when I feel like life is the funnest, when you're just like, I don't have a plan. And right now feels really good.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just, it's interesting how a lot of people try to function by like making, and that's why people feel failure, I think, so often, is because they make a plan and they don't reach it.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, I failed. Well, not really. It was just, it's taking a different route than it was than you thought.
Yeah, I used to think that I had no follow through because I would be going for something and then I would just be like, oh, that's shiny, and then just go for something else.
Yeah,
and
the shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, it took a long time for me to embrace that. I'm just curious. I'm curious about a million things, and I'm never going to be someone who is like, oh yeah, Jessa, she's super predictable. She is this person. It's like, no, I'm that until I feel like I have fully experienced it, and then I'm on a completely different kick, which makes me very contradictory.
Yeah.
And leads to me having almost a cast of characters that play very actively in one section of my life. And then I move on to the next section of my life and all of the characters change. Yeah. And so I have people that I've known, thank God for social media, but I've known for 20 years and stuff. But like the active cast of characters is completely different every few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool though. I mean, I guess we'll close out with this little piece because I feel like this is something that you have gotten really good at over time, and because of your experiences and because of your takeaways, is you are really good at making a choice and kind of putting that in front of you, and that's your singular goal and you just get it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of manifested lately in your, the Comedy Central thing and your podcast. I mean, you guys are crushing. Mormon and the Meth-head is Jessa's podcast, by the way, with Aaron Woodall. And you just hit 100,000 downloads.
100,000 downloads in 2 months.
In 15 episodes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
crazy.
Insane.
We had like a negligible fan base between the two of us when the podcast came out. And was at first just going to be us comparing notes between the difference between someone raised Mormon and someone who's a meth head, and then me kind of corrupting him. And then it turned into this hilarious journey into our fears and insecurities and and our deprogramming, and then just this whole thing. But yeah, it's been, I can't believe that people come to our shows now when we're on the road because they're fans of the pod. Like straight, it's always crazy. It's like, you don't know me personally and you listen to my podcast.
It's so cool though.
Yeah,
and it's just going to keep blowing up. I'm really excited to see what it does in the future. But I was with Jessa and Aaron in South by Southwest in Texas, March. And they diligently recorded 6 episodes, and then Jessa proceeded to leave her laptop on the plane with all the episodes inside of it.
There's such good episodes, and I finally got that laptop back. I drove to LAX.
You got them.
Yeah, I did finally. Okay. The day I didn't go there. I
remember you got the laptop, but I was hoping the episodes were still like intact in it or whatever.
They were.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So my what I learned about making things happen was that people have things that they want, but they keep them in something that I call fantasy land, where it's just like, yeah, I want that, but they don't feel like they have to have it. Mm-hmm. And the trick to getting things that you want, no matter how ambitious a goal, if you just make it, like someone would be like, I want a new apartment. I want a new apartment. I want a new apartment. But you're like, why don't you just get a new apartment? Well, I don't have enough money. Like they're waiting for some mystery influx of money.
Like a bag of cash.
Yeah. But if tomorrow your landlord said, get out because I'm going to sell this house, you would take that and put it into the must-have category and you would get a new apartment. Well, you can just make a decision to move things into the I must have this department and go follow as if you have no choice. Follow as if everything falls apart if you don't get this tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so I lived in Delaware and was pushing 40 years old, and just finally one day was like, you know what, if I don't take comedy seriously for a few years and make something happen, I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life. And I'd been around comedy and like casually done comedy for years, but and then people were like, well, you better move to New York or LA because nobody can make it happen from Delaware. And I was like, oh, okay, well, now I have to do it because you just said I couldn't do this. And so I got Comedy Central's
Challenge
This Is Not
accepted.
Happening while living in Delaware, homeschooling at 40.
Yep.
And
that was your gateway to finally moving out here.
Yeah. And then I was like, now I have to move to LA. And 6 months later, I found a way to move to LA.
Yep. It's fucking awesome. So in closing, where can everybody find your podcast? Where can everybody find you?
Mormon and the Meth-head, just mormonandthemethhead.com right now, or search it on iTunes, any of the podcast place under the title.
Yeah.
I think we're actually switching providers soon.
Okay.
And Facebook is the best place to follow me, although I'm starting to get more active on Twitter.
She books a lot of shows on Facebook, so she's fucking funny on Facebook.
Yeah. Also, Mormon and the Meth-head start at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah. Start episode
episodic.
1.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah, sure. And then I'm at MPH Comedy. The podcast is at Future Role Model. The comedy studio is at Comedy Pop-Up or CPU Podcasts. And this is guest Jessa Reed. Find her, follow her, love everything she does. She's about to blow the fuck up. Thank you for tuning into Future Role Model.